Welcome to the January 2024 Business Insights online network interview. This month, Pete Allison will be chairing a discussion about the Festival of Internships with Florent from Quantum Light and also with Neil from Neil Morgan Design. So over to you, Pete.
Thanks, Guy, and welcome to Florent and to Neil. So today we're holding the interviews that we normally do, but this is a little bit different. And I find myself in a funny place because this is also a project I've been drawn into, and that'll be evident in a moment. I sort of have a hat on that's not the normal hat I wear running any of the business shows, although it has to be said we got involved in this through the business shows. Florent runs a business out of the Bristol Science Park, and I'm going to let you reintroduce yourself in a little bit more depth in a second, Florent. But was also an exhibitor with us in South Gloucestershire. Florent and I found ourselves talking at the top end of a network meeting, only live in person, not dissimilar to this in principle, but we actually involved a few break and rolls and cups of coffee, and we found we had mutual interests in festivals and business development, and an idea and a kernel formed in Florent's mind, and the next thing we knew, it was getting quite busy. But I'll come back to Florent in a second. And Neil we know well. Neil is very much an embedded part of the show before we get anywhere near this. Neil looked after all our brand design and looked after our graphics and generally sits in the background, describes himself as our brand guardian, which we tease him about. But it is true. He looks after, because we do all sorts of weird and wonderful things with our brand when nobody's got enough time to do anything, then to get on with it. And Neil just sometimes taps us on the shoulder and says, nah, it wasn't really meant to work like that, and that's great. And so when you identify our different shows by colour, then it is Neil who is behind that, and the fine job he does. But I'm going to let you guys, so having given you an intro, what I'm going to ask you to do now is reintroduce yourselves, but in the context of this project that we talked about, which is a festival of internships. And if any of you haven't seen it, when we sent out the reminder email last night, we actually attached on that email a PDF that Neil's generated, which just gives a bit of background to it. So it might just be worth, if you haven't already, having a look at that in the meantime. But Florent, do you want to just sort of say hello again, just in the context of this project that we're looking at here? Over to you, Florent.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you, everyone. It's great to be able to tell you a little bit about this idea, which I'm very excited about. But as Pete told you, I had the opportunity of meeting Pete in person during the last Gloucestershire business show. And there was two things that were on my mind. I've always loved internships, and I've always had somewhat of an internship program, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, because I think young minds and talented, students make a huge difference in companies, and vice versa. They're basically able to gain insights and experience that could help them in their career. But at the business show, right before we had a chance to talk, I had the chance to do a podcast with Alice Violet. And we had a very interesting group of students attend. And before the show, because Alice, was taking her time to set up the technical, there was a couple of glitches, so she took a little bit longer. And this gave us an opportunity to start asking some questions to the students and to listen a little bit to what they were thinking about. And it came across to me that, yes, there's so many opportunities for business shows, and especially the ones that Pete has done that are amazing, and I'll continue to be an exhibitor if I can. But that there might be an interesting overlap between the need to cater more directly to students and also bring in something that came across from talking to Pete, which was his amazing experience in the music industry. And I was, also taken aback by his incredible experience in creating scenarios and running very complex, scenarios for government. So I thought that was a very interesting overlap. And so I thought maybe, we should talk about creating what I would call a festival, because there has a musical aspect to it. So in the traditional way that we bring corporate sponsors to a floor, and we basically bring a traffic of potential buyers or potential customers, I thought we could do this catering more directly to students. And then talking to some other friends in academia, especially a friend at Christchurch University in Canterbury, she was very excited about the idea, and she confirmed, listen, you know, students are definitely looking for internships, and I've had a chance to talk to more students, and there, of course, is a very good coincidence with apprenticeships, which is something that I'll pass back to Pete, and maybe we can, you know, see if there's a difference or what the value is, or what's the different angle. But the idea is that we live in a region where there's an enormous investment in technology. Some of the most important companies and government institutions are all here. There is certainly a regional focus on artificial intelligence with some important investments like Tthe, that is going to be one of the largest exascale computers in the UK, which is being built right next door to us here at the at the Bristol and Bath Science Park. And of course, we have Cheltenham and their huge development of Golden Valley, right? So there's a little bit of a technology region developing, and I think there's a clear need for STEM students. So there's a first focus on engineering, on coding, on AI, on technology. And I think that there's an overlap of interest to meet these kind of people directly in a way that could maximize the opportunities for best fit. So one of the things I haven't told you that we do, we also are quite involved in artificial intelligence. We're IBM business partners. I have a long history with IBM and with computers in my background. I started way back with the VM370, which dates me. And we also have installed in our lab one of the most advanced and fast model training computers, an AC922. So when we were at Pete's show, we were basically promoting AI services, which we also offer to you, of course. But in this case, one of the additional, you know, differentiators for our internship program is that we'd like to create this database that we've started on and try to identify both from the student side as well as from the internship provider, which are the best matches. And to try to create a very high level profile before the event so that we have a very interesting number of insights. And of course, you know, we have to play out this idea, but this is one of the ideas that we're playing around with. But in the most simple form, it's a 3-day event. So we have Thursday, Friday, and we've added a Saturday. And Thursday, Friday, we'd like to invite, and one of the things that's coming across from the ladies that were talking about apprenticeships is that I think in the apprenticeship world, these are really well structured academic kind of components of careers, where they're probably longer time duration and they're more formatted. And so I guess one of the principal differentiators in my mind is that internships would probably be created by the employer, by the corporate sponsor themselves. And in many cases, we would like to promote new opportunities for internships that haven't been contemplated. So we would like to kind of come to some of our sponsors that we've been talking to, and they had very good feedback for us, is that, yes, there might be many opportunities that we haven't considered. That, yeah.
So that's a good overview of what we're dealing with here. And actually, this takes me back. I mean, I spent the last, I don't know how many years, just really focused on business shows in terms of what I spend a lot of my time doing. And this is this conversation that is fairly fresh. I mean, the South Gloucestershire show only happened in November, and this has all been happening quite fast in these things. And quite often, you know, if I go back a couple of decades and we're looking at festivals and I'm drawn into something which is already existing with a view to either taking a new direction or taking over a management role, what we've been doing here is looking at the other side that I have done in the past, is gone into the embryonic side of something that's starting up. And my role in these things is often to sort of sit quietly in the corner, observe what's going on, and then try and construct some sort of path to make it actually happen in reality, because you need the visionary in these things. You need the practical operations side, and you need the business side. And there's another chap who actually isn't with us at the moment called Bill, who's, I guess, beginning to look a little bit at that. But the other person you need, and I'm going to draw Neil in now, is somebody who's going to interpret everything and make it create something which is a little bit easier to understand when you don't have all the time in the world to sit in a long and convoluted conversation about an idea that's just formed. That PDF we sent down last night is the very first iteration of that interpretation. But I want to ask Neil, you know, you and I know each other reasonably well. We've done a lot of work on the shows together. We've done a few bits and pieces on other things. I'm fascinated in a slightly academic context to say, so, you know, one day the phone goes and it's me and it's another harebrained idea. Is it a harebrained idea? Yes, but not about the show. It's about this thing. Now, what was your journey from that sort of moment to the point where you completely understand it, you cross it, and you're completely in charge of everything right now? Okay, but what was your journey in that, Neil?
Well, I won't say I got petered, but no. But as you say, I obviously get involved with the shows quite heavily, and I really enjoy it. It's a fantastic environment to be a part of, and that festival atmosphere and that festival sort of concept, I suppose, is one that I really take to and enjoy being part of. And the idea and the prospect of getting involved with a new festival, and a festival which is, I think, quite unique and quite different, and certainly has a place, I think, in today's society, in today's commerce, and building those gaps and bridging those gaps between academia and commerce is something which interests me. But yeah, I was happy to get involved, and obviously, as you say, like yourself, being in part of something at the embryonic stage is something which interests me. Obviously, with any new venture, any new event or product, it needs positioning and branding, and that's where I came along. Obviously, looking at three quite distinctive areas. Obviously, you've got commerce, you've got sort of educational establishments, and then obviously you've got the students themselves who obviously you want to be positioned. So three quite different audiences in that respect to try and sort of target and to try and appeal to and try and make whatever I created accessible to. But to go back to your question, really, it was just really something which really interested me, and trying to use the knowledge that we've gained through other shows, I suppose, to put into this place, but at the same time, obviously, in quite a different way, I think. But yeah, I just really enjoy getting involved with projects like this, and especially from early stages, and helping to evolve and sort of grow, and then obviously creating some mutual benefits as a result of it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Now there's a question I'm going to line up for sort of both of you to take on here from your different positions, but the context of it is that I with the business shows over the period of time, we've come to really understand what we mean by the word festival. And there's a little bit of me before I was into the business shows, and for the purpose of those who aren't so aware, I spent a part of my life designing and building and running large-scale festival sites for Greenfield Arts Festivals and Witchwood and Greenbelt and things like that. And I'd be the site manager, and I'd be the person who'd be designing it. And one of the lines we used to use a lot is, you know, we build the platform, but we don't exist unless we've got the people who people respect coming to play. And the easy analogy there is you look at Glastonbury and you say, yes, I'm going to buy a ticket to Glastonbury. The only reason you're actually buying a ticket to Glastonbury is that Elton John's headlining, or Paul McCartney is, or the theatre company that you really love or happen to have a thing in the theatre. If you didn't have those things, Glastonbury would be nothing. And so it creates a platform. That is a really different thing to if I'm putting a conference on. If I run a medical conference, and the assumption obviously is I know about medical conferences, I have a medical conference that is on the theme of heart surgery, let's say, and it's a linear pattern of dialogue from beginning to end that has a that has a learning curve associated with it, and you come out the end. You probably have a keynote at the beginning where everyone's together, whereas with a festival, you kind of lob the kitchen sink at it, and the whole thing just goes, and it's a slightly mad environment, and you're not trying to do everything. You're actually being invited to choose what you want to do, and that's an easy invitation because you'll go to Glastonbury because Elton John is headline, and that's why. And so you're going to do that. Whereas you go to the medical conference and you're going to sit at the beginning and run your pattern. So the emphasis of the festival is much more on you as an individual who's chosen to attend. Now, as we reasoned that out, because all of that, I spent ages rehearsing all that in my own head and understanding it, because when we put the festival operating model into the business world, and you know, the line I use regularly is, and we confuse the living daylights out of everybody, including ourselves, for about 3 years, because everyone coming at it from the business perspective was thinking conference, and everyone coming at it, you know, from the involvement we have in festivals was thinking festival. The mutual sentiment was we had a great time. So I mean, it's a good starting point. Everybody loved it, but everyone was saying, well, I'm not quite sure why I liked it so much, because it seems to be just, you know, there was no order to it, and it took us quite a while to realize actually that it's a really different operating model, and the emotional intelligence behind it and everything and all that kind of game. And just as a side note, that itself is quite different from Expo, which those of us on this call will be quite used to. You know, you go along to the local hotel or the hall, and that's about, it's about numbers, it's about sales. And what we do with the business shows is it is about sales. Obviously, ultimately, business development, business growth is our space, and that comes from sales. But the primary thing here is thought leadership, and it's about creating new spaces. Now, all of that preamble was allowing us to say, so what we're doing here, because we're doing it again, we're putting the festival operating model into an environment which is not normally associated with festival operating. It's associated with more business track. So coming at it from your own different places, my question is very simple, actually. Why do you see this as something that is needed now? That is my question. And I've done a long way to get into it, but I just need to contextualize it. Florin, do you want to go first? Why is this needed now?
I was just going to say, Neil, do you want to go first?
You guys had the questions in advance.
You want to tackle it first, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the festival sort of concept, I mean, I think I've been involved with quite a few. I think the way I typify it is what you put into it is what you get out of it, to be brutally honest. And the prospect of planting 3 quite different audiences into a sort of Bath and Bristol Science Park and stirring them around a bit and making a funky sort of, you know, anarchic sort of, you know, few days of fact finding and sort of tasks, meeting people, conversations, collaboration, all those words that we like to throw around is sort of fascinating. But why is it relevant? I suppose, as I said before, I think it's really important. I've had 2 sons that have gone through academia, and one's gone to the other side and one's just about to. And to bridge that gap, I think is really, really important these days, to actually sort of, you know, it used to be never the twain shall meet. You know, you used to sort of study and then, gosh, you got to go into the big wide world. But I think more and more these days, you know, it's sort of there needs to be some transition and some sort of collaboration between both of those worlds. And I think I see this as an opportunity to, you know, to introduce, you know, students and people who are studying and have an aspiration to work with larger corporates and organizations, or to do more on apprenticeships, things like that, to actually get in a room and having conversations with people and do a bit more fact finding. So it is really relevant in that respect, that if only to really bridge that gap between academia and the big wide world out there of commerce.
Sorry, what's your view?
Okay, why is there a need? I think the conversations that I've had with students lead me to believe that they want it, that they're interested. You know, many of the students that I've spoken to are interested in an event that's focused on them. So that's the first idea that I think we have to get across, and really, you know, ask ourselves if the model really caters to them. So, you know, despite the fact, of course, our first line of clients is the corporate, because that's, you know, an economic reality. The corporate needs these students, you know, and so what do we do about it? So, for example, one of the differentiators as well is the introduction of hackathons, cybersecurity hackathons, hopefully sponsored by some of the big leaguers, you know, in the region. And we've had some conversations with one of the aerospace companies that does this, and they love it. And the students that are in, you know, in information technology and in cybersecurity and data science love it. So can we replicate that for other, you know, STEM fields? I think so. So the first order is, how do we build an event with all of the experience that Pete has, which makes it, you know, very easy, that actually speaks the language of students and gets them to understand that we're really interested in being flexible with their careers, you know. So the meaning that we have for internship, it's a lot more flexible than apprenticeship. And another part of that idea is, can we create some new opportunities? Can we, work with corporate sponsors and get them to open their doors to internships that they were not looking at? So cater some of the unknown or some of the less visible demand. So we know, for example, there's huge demand for creative coders. So can we cater to some of that? There's huge demand for electrical engineering, for people that have, hands-on skills to develop prototypes. So in this case, I think for the first event, we're probably going to have, as my suggestion, Pete, a more STEM, technical kind of approach, but there is no reason why in the future there couldn't be a more liberal arts one, for artists and things like this.
Yeah.
And of course, the more in your face, clearly festival portion of it is, I told Pete that it would be fun if on the Saturday we had students that have bands. There's a lot of amateur bands out there, and there's a lot of executives who are either DJs or play music, to have a day where we have some ad hoc bands come together. And, not in a massive stage, but in a very simple, day stage. Can we get them to build teams this way? Could it be a way to break down some barriers between the sponsors and the students? So in that sense, that's the festive part of it, music. And
you mentioned a couple of really important things there about breaking, and probably summing up in what you literally just said, breaking down the barriers. And I think for me, when we think about the traditional approach to internships, and if we get time, we'll talk later about really what we mean by internships, but that's a whole other story. But you think, I'm going to apply for a internship, I'm going to put my CV together, I'm going to write a letter or an email or whatever I do, and I'm going to end up with an interview, and then they're going to decide. And it's a little bit like a job interview, only it's not actually a job in the conventional sense. What we're doing here is creating the opportunity for the applicant, the student, let's just use a simple word, student, and the provider, who is, let's use another simple word, the corporate, to actually not necessarily be in a conventional two sides of a desk interview environment, but actually get to know each other, break down some of those barriers, get to understand. And we all know, if you think of the analogy of the party, you walk into the party, you spend time, you meet somebody, actually you're talking, and because you can spend the time and you're in a relaxed environment, you begin to be innovative. You use business language. It's not the language you use at a party, but that is what we're talking about. It's why Google have the billiard table down in the basement and all that sort of thing. It's because those moments are the moments where you actually get under the skin of a person. So what that leads to is what these days will look like, and we've just been starting to talk to somebody else. Florence talked to somebody, and actually met him, a chap called Andy, who retired within the last year out of a certain government department that's got a very big building on the edge of Cheltenham. But in a parallel life, I've known Andy a very long time. Actually, we were at school together, but he's also been quite involved in the festival and music world that I have. But I'd ended up doing it, working for people and actually creating a business out of it. Andy did it because he enjoyed it, and he was kind of volunteered left, right, and centre. And he's actually built up over a number of decades a really in-depth experience in being involved in these things, and he's quite heavily involved in the Glastonbury Comms Centre and things like that. Now, we talked to Andy, I've talked to Andy in language that Flora has planted, really, about thinking about challenges. And you've mentioned the hackathon there. And actually, what we're looking at here is on that Thursday, Friday, I'm not clear enough about where the weekend leads us yet, but if we're talking to a corporate sponsor, we're thinking that we're saying to them, what is the challenge? Let's develop and build a challenge that people can choose. So if I was at a normal conventional arts festival, I might choose to go and be in the big top and watch the theatre company or go and sit in front of main stage. In this scenario, I might be choosing to go and engage with that challenge over there. Now, we've talked about hackathons, but it could be a lot of other things. And certainly the Government Communication Centre in Cheltenham has a long track record in building challenges and things that they take out to spaces. But it's setting that scenario. So we want to create an opportunity for the corporates to meet the students and the universities and the education providers Is that what it's going to look like? Do you think, what's the running time when you look at Thursday, Friday, Saturday? What does all this look like, and how does it fit together, and how does it feel? I'll ask that of Florin, but I'm priming Neil because Neil's coming at that. Neil has no backdrop. You know, he's been looking at the brand. I'm springing it on him, but I am interested to see what his knee jerk as somebody who's just looking at it is. But I'm going to ask the question to Florin first and give Neil a chance to think.
Yeah, we'll give Neil a little more time to mull it over. I think one of the principal elements of success is going to be preparation. You know, the fact that we're coming at this with a very substantial number of student applications, which I think is one of our goals, you know, to really engage the student population and to create excitement, you know, and maybe we'll have some ways to reach out to different universities. But, you know, what I'd like to see before the show, before the festival, is that we have a very substantial engagement of students. That's going to be both attractive to the corporates, but it's also going to enable us to prepare. So we'll know a lot about their backgrounds. We'll know about a lot about the challenges that they're looking for. And hopefully there'll be some homework done with the sponsors ahead of time. So that when Thursday comes, there's already an anticipation. There's already meetings set up. You know, you might have the ability, hopefully, I mean, this is just in my mind, Pete, I haven't told you this, but maybe we have a scheduling facility online on our website, you know, so if you want to enroll, you create your agenda, you know, and say, okay, I'd like to meet such and such and such sponsors, and vice versa. You know, we have a site, you know, another page for sponsors, and they tell us, you know, which candidates they're mostly interested in. So whereas most shows, I think everybody shows up there, yes, with preparation, but not with direct knowledge of who's coming. I think that could be very interesting, you know, that we have anticipation and that we have, for example, the ability to schedule conferences in our conference rooms from the most, you know, sought after corporates. You know, certainly Cheltenham would have a conference room, but the aerospace company may also want to have one. And we can say to them, look, you know, we have 30 people that have signed up for your talk, and these are their backgrounds.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is novel. All of it is basically subject to Pete's experience and leadership because he's done this so many times. But just by the way of answering in terms of vision and in terms of anticipation, I think if we do a very good, solid job of early recruitment and early information sharing, I think we'll have a powerful platform. And then everything will just basically play out normally because we will have created an agenda that people are eager to fulfill, to
Brilliant.
show up.
Now, I'm really conscious of time here. We've been going at this a while and we've barely scratched the surface of the questions we've prepared, but that's absolutely fine. That's the way these things go. I'm just going to ask Neil for that reaction. Neil, it can be as long or as short as you like it to be.
The one thing
what I will just say is after that, we'll just see if anybody's got any questions. I'm just timing that one. But Neil, do you want to react in your way?
Yeah, the one thing I sort of written down is actually a sense of fun. It should be engaging. In fact, it's a festival. So, you know, you think of internships as possibly quite a stressful situation where you're trying to prove yourself to a possible employer or sort of, you know, a big corporate or somebody you hold in high regard. I mean, I see this as a space where people can almost be themselves and actually sort of really show their true worth and perhaps spend a bit more time getting to know other people and possible employers and actually, you know, really sort of trying to sell themselves as they are, you know, as opposed to try too hard to actually be something they're not. Through interesting challenges and through that whole environment. I see it as quite an informal, relaxed environment, but fun at the same time and quite quirky and fun. And hopefully as a result of that environment, people's personalities will come across better than they would in another format.
No, I think that's really great. And I think that also raises something which I hadn't necessarily cottoned onto myself, but this is very important. There's a certain amount of briefing and training we're going to need to give. You know, if we say this is a festival of internships and you say to the students, you know, I'm going to put you on the edge, I'm going to put you in a room with a couple of corporates who could offer you internships. There's nothing, it's going to be a bit of fun, there's no pressure about it, you get it right. You know, so actually how do we invite these guys to to approach this event. Okay, so I'm going to ask if anybody's got any questions. I think I just saw something pop into the chat there from Leonie, but it's also Leonie, are you still? No, she had to pop off the call, didn't she? Okay. Has anyone got any questions they want to lob at either Florent or Neil? We're all, as you can tell, thinking on our feet here, so we're really interested to get any input anybody has.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
So I'm just wondering how this differentiates from the typical careers fairs that you get at university, just because I went to Uni of Bristol, and the advice that followed was excellent. So I completely see the need for the service, but I also think universities and graduates are really helping those students. So is this post-school leavers that you're hoping to target?
What I can say is the universities are very much going to be a part of the. It's going to be a tool in their toolbox. We need their involvement, and so this will be something hopefully that they will be promoting, offering. But to answer your question properly, Lauren, you've probably got the most of thinking on that.
Thank you, Pete. Great question. Yes, well, I think that universities are doing a good job, but I haven't seen an event that's completely focused just on this. So I think a lot of the programs that I've heard about and seen basically are ad hoc, and they reach here and there, but there's not a concentrated effort to bring it all together. And I also think that we probably want to start a little bit earlier in the career of students, you know, whereas the apprenticeship is more formal, and in many cases it's part of their degree, or there's some credit that is attached to it more directly. In this case, we might think about it a little bit more flexible, just in general terms of knowledge and skill and capabilities. But it's a new question. I think we need to look at it carefully. But I think that the overlap between the work that universities are doing and what we're doing could be a great synergy to complement the existing, you know, efforts to help students. So the idea is for us to add value and to work together with existing programs and to be an extension of those programs, and hopefully all the universities that do decide to work with us will have a big reward, and will get, you know, value for their time and money.
Brilliant. Thanks. Does anyone else have anything, or otherwise I will hand back to Guy. Is anyone no? Okay. So Guy, well, first of all, Florent and Neil, thank you very much. That was very interesting and actually very helpful, because for all of us, I know it's a brand new piece of thinking, and we're all trying to extend it out a bit. So it's certainly helpful for me to ask a few questions that possibly are questions I need to be asking you guys anyway. So thank you very much. Guy, back to you.